every company wants to win every day. And to win every day, you have to have 3 wins. And the first thing you have to win is your employees. Your employees must feel good about what they do. They must feel supported. They must like the team that they're on. They must like the work that they're doing. And they must be happy. And when your employees are happy, then they're going to take care of your customers.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here today. My name is Tiffany Alexander, and this is Unveiling Journeys. I love networking. I love referrals. I love meeting new people, and I love hearing their stories. So that's why the podcast was born. The reason that I got to meet our amazing guest is because I was at a women's event. We were networking and we decided to stay in close touch because, you just feel like you're attracted to that person and their energy. And then it was like, hey, let's do like a podcast thing. Will you come on my show? Because she's doing some incredible things that are changing industries, that are changing humans. And I can no longer contain that she is so darn cool, and I want you guys to know about it. So with that, I'm super excited. Thank you, Julie, for coming today. Miss Julie Jones, she is on, and tell us who you are and what you're doing right now.
Thank you, Tiffany. And I love networking too. And part of why we go to conferences is not necessarily to sit in the sessions, right? Although we do learn great things, but we go to network and meet cool people. And I knew immediately that you were a cool person and that I wanted to be around you. And we've stayed in touch. Let's see, this was a year and a half ago, I think is what we decided. And we've stayed in touch all these months, and we have calls every once in a while and support each other. And I am so grateful that you are in my circle of influence. So, that's the way it works. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love being like a bright little chunk of someone's day. My favorite, if you guys really want to know, you could add me on Voxer. That way I could just straight up walkie-talkie you because it's harder to text and call. It's like, why not just give you a little, hey, thinking about you, type of a thing. So
I love Voxer. Yeah, you and I Voxer back and forth. I had to turn my notifications on because I didn't know that you were Voxer. You're like, hey, why are you not answering me?
And that's when I was like, do you need to call me? That's all good. So you are doing some incredible things. Tell everybody what kind of work you're doing right now and for who.
So I work with anyone, but I work primarily with young professionals who are coming into the workplace to help them navigate the professional setting. Because you come to your job, you come to life with what you have and you have experience. And so people expect that everything about navigating a professional setting is common sense, but it's not common sense if you don't know, because you don't know what you don't know. So
Yeah.
I bridge the gap between what someone's boss expects them to know, and yet no one has really taught them.
I love that.
And the reason that I'm doing it is because I was a teacher. I taught middle school for 15 years, and we were sitting in a professional development, and this was 2010, 2011 school year. This is how long I've been doing this. And our principal said, she stood up and, everyone's excited, new school year, and we're all excited. And she stood up and said, the business community is telling us that the students are not ready when they come out of high school and college. They're not ready for their jobs. And so we're going to add on something else this year to what you're already doing so that we can better prepare our students. And the air in the room deflated. The excitement disappeared because the stories that you hear coming out of education are all true. Teachers are overworked, they're underpaid, and they're definitely underloved. And I really believe that it's not that we're overworking the teachers, it's that we're not working smarter. And so I did some research that year, and I found out that companies are hiring etiquette consultants to come into their companies to work with their team members to teach them the social graces that we weren't taught. Things like how to communicate within your team, to have the right mindset and attitude coming in, how to take a client to dinner. Do you know that there are people who've never been to a nice restaurant and then all of a sudden they get a job and they're trying to go on a job interview That's usually the first indication of, we're going to take you to this nice restaurant as part of your job interview. And the students blow it. They don't know what to do because they have never been taught that there's a difference between going to eat with your family and friends versus going to eat where it's a business meal and everything you do is being evaluated, and that it's really not about the food and drink. It's about the conversation.
Yeah.
So, how to build relationships, how to go network, how to meet people. I've done 4 radio shows recently about annoying habits of coworkers and struggles that our Gen Zs are having. And, as we're being called back into the office now, there's a lot of face-to-face communication.
Hmm.
And our Gen Zs are bringing to the workplace their experience. And their experience is they are not out and about, and they're behind technology,
Yeah.
and they're fantastic. They are totally skilled, 100% bring so much value to our workplace. But they have a struggle when it comes to communication. So artificial intelligence is great and it makes our lives easier and it's just doing great things. But in my world, AI means actual interaction, and that is never going to go away. And
Yeah.
so it really dives into emotional intelligence, communication, and etiquette for me. And these are all skills that we can teach. And it's all part of leadership. And so I believe that schools need to really focus on more of it. And I work with schools in this and help build students, student athletes when they're going to visit colleges for scholarships, students when they're going to interviews for scholarships. And when students come out, they're ready. They need to go learn how to sell themselves without sounding arrogant, and have a conversation. And these are just the skills. This is all what I do. And I am so grateful that I have this opportunity to work with people because I believe that it's our legacy when we link arms with our younger generation and help bring them forward. That's really our legacy.
I love that so much. And I love what you're doing is even translating into the corporate space.
Oh,
You were
yeah.
telling me you're able to have this aspect that you can translate what we're doing for the kids to even the adults that never got it as kids or as adults, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you have people who have ambition and they come in at an entry level job and they've worked there for a while and they're getting bored and they're wanting to move up. They're wanting to learn more skills. They're wanting to do things, but they don't know how to ask. They don't know how to advocate for themselves. They have in their head the mindset, the impostor syndrome has set in. Well, I don't have a degree, or maybe my boss doesn't want me. So instead of going and saying, what's the career path for me? What are the options for me to grow in this role and stay with this company? They have in their head a story. It's not necessarily the real story, but companies are not going out to like a floor or to the field personnel and saying, who wants to move up? Who wants a promotion? What they do is they say they have an org chart and they say, we need to fill this position. And then they go find somebody, but they don't know that there's somebody in the company that would be perfect for that job, that wants to do it, that might not have all the skills, but they have the culture and the heart. And they're already part of the team. When you hire for culture and train the skill, you have a great employee. And so why not teach them how to promote themselves so that they can grow in a company?
Yeah.
And so this is what happens. And so this is what I do. I teach people how to advocate for yourself and say, I want a promotion. I want to grow. What skills do I need to learn? Do I need to take a night class?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to take an online class? Education's easy today. I mean, you could get a 4-year degree totally online on your own time.
Right.
Right. So, and there's also certifications. There's all kinds of things that you can do to learn and grow. And so if you show someone, if you prove to your employer that you're willing to learn and grow, then they should be willing to hire you and they will help you, because that's where the good leaders come from, are those who grow up through the company.
Right. Right. And I appreciate companies that are even open to doing that or that
Yeah.
lean heavier into that. Just makes so much more sense. They don't have to hire. Yeah. Let's do this. I want to hear, because you weren't just born into this, right? And invented it overnight. Where are you from? And really, what did you even want to be when you grew up? Kind of a thing.
We're going way back, aren't we? I'm from Dallas, Texas. I grew up in the area, moved around quite a bit in my younger years when I was a young adult and was raising my children. I lived in Laurel, Mississippi. They now have a show there, a HGTV show called Hometown, where it's like a kind of like a Chip and Joanna Gaines where they do,
Okay.
or Waco. We've got a couple in Laurel, Mississippi, which is a precious town.
Yeah.
I mean, even back when I lived there, it was such a sweet town, just small southern town. They're revitalizing it. We live there. That's where I did my student teaching. Actually, was in Laurel. Then I moved to Lafayette, Louisiana. Again, a wonderful town, beautiful. And that's where I started teaching. And I learned to speak Cajun because my students, I taught elementary school at that time, and my students actually did not like the fact that I had a Texas accent and because I couldn't pronounce their names. And these are elementary students. So you have to have thick skin. When you work with kids,
Oh, yeah.
you got to
Yeah.
have thick skin. I mean, and so they didn't like the fact that I couldn't pronounce their names. So they worked with me. And so over the time that I was in the school system there, I learned to really speak Cajun. And when I moved back to Texas, people could not believe that I was actually from Texas because they were like, you sound like you're from Louisiana. I was like, well, I've lived there for a long time. But of
Yeah.
course that faded, that faded. But I lived in far South Texas. I lived in Kingsville, Texas, which was a rural ranching community, and learned about that before I moved back to Dallas, to the big city.
Yeah.
And it was really sweet though for me to live in all of those places because that gave me a wider view of cultures. We think of, when you talk about different cultures, you think of people from different countries, right? What's their culture? But within our United States, we have different cultures, you know? You live on the West Coast, that's completely different than the East Coast or even where I live. And so, it really opened my eyes to cultures and how you relate to people. And I always knew that relating to people was important. That comes natural to me. That was taught to me in my home. And so my personality style lends itself to relationships. But it was a wider view of going into the school systems and teaching children. And I'm not from their culture, how I had to learn to adapt, and in order to reach them, I had to learn to really adapt to their culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those
Because
hard lessons like in between so they
right,
could learn from you and feel like all those feelings, right?
yeah, especially with kids, right? Because they're still growing and developing. And I remember applying for a job one time and I was in the job interview and the principal asked me, do students have to like you in order to learn from you? And there was a time in my life when I would have said, no, because I'm not there to be their friend. I'm there to teach them and, they're going to respect me and blah, 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 blah. But let me tell you, through all this experience, I did an about face on that because I believe the answer is yes. They do have to like you on some level. You don't have to be their favorite teacher, but they have to know that when they walk into your room, you see them as a human being. It's not a transaction. It's not a test score. It is, they trust you enough
Yeah.
to know that you care about them first. And there has to be that level of trust and like before they will open up. Because if they think you don't like them, they will shut down. And what I have found in business, that adults are that way too.
I could see that. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, think about your cultures. I mean, right now, let's just stick with education right now, but this applies to any industry. So whoever's listening, think about your industry, but let's look at what's going on in education right now. That's an industry that I would say and this is not research based, this is just Julie speaking right now. I would say it's somewhat in a crisis because we're losing teachers. They're flooding the school systems. They're deciding that they don't want to stay. They're staying, news teachers are coming in right out of college. They're staying 3 or 4 years and they're getting out. They're doing something else. And so to me, it seems to be a crisis. Now, maybe it's just our culture here in Texas. Maybe it's just right here, but it seems to be, I'm hearing it from all over. But I know that through social media, and we're doing things differently now, the state of Louisiana has decided to go full on. We are changing the way we do things in the state of Louisiana. The state superintendent has implemented a back to basics curriculum where he's actually mailing flashcards to school systems and saying, let's learn multiplication facts again. Let's do sight words.
Yes.
It's back to basics. Because I heard him interview and he said, we've chased shiny objects too long. We need to get back to what works. And so their test scores are turning around.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yes. And then there's Mr. Lamb, who is a principal in Baton Rouge, and he's on social media, and you can find him on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. And he is being a servant leader, and he's promoting the lessons I've learned and how I want to support my teachers. Because what he says is when an administrator supports the teachers, everything turns around. And he's putting out all this content. He ditched his office, which is now a conference room, for a rolling cart. And he spends 90% of his day in the hallways. So if a teacher needs to go to the bathroom, which sometimes that happens during the day, and it's hard for a teacher. I used to say I have a teacher bladder. I can hold it all day.
That's what some of my teacher friends say. I'm like, how do you go once a day? And they're like, teacher bladder.
You just have to do it. So what he does is he takes over the classroom for a teacher who needs to go to the bathroom.
That's amazing.
Because he's in the hallway. All they got to do is stick their head out. If a teacher runs out of copies or the copy machine was broken and then the day started and they didn't get everything done, they can stick their head out and say, I need help. And he will take their work and he'll go make copies for them.
That's amazing. That's a doer. That's a true leader.
That's a true leader. That's a servant leader.
Yep.
And really, this is something I learned when I had a plumbing company, and I was taught this. There are 3 wins every day. Every company wants to win every day. And to win every day, you have to have 3 wins. And the first thing you have to win is your employees. Your employees must feel good about what they do. They must feel supported. They must like the team that they're on. They must like the work that they're doing, and they must be happy. And when your employees are happy, then they're going to take care of your customers. A lot of people have that backwards and say, we take care of our customers first, but you can't really serve your customers if you are in disarray and dysfunctional in your company. So we talk about getting your house in order and taking care and serving your internal customers first. They're going to then in turn serve your external customers.
Yeah.
And in a school situation, when your teachers are happy and feel loved and heard and valued and supported, they're going to take care of the students, right? And then when the employees and the customers are happy, then the company will win. And those are the 3 wins in the order that they should win every day. And so good leaders understand that. And Principal Lamb apparently understands that and is communicating that through social media so that other administrators can get ideas on ways they can turn their building around, stop the turnover, stop the revolving door, keep teachers in the classroom, let them teach, which is really what we need to be doing for all of our students or, all of our companies. Because if we take care of our company, our building, our department, our branch, whatever it is, then you're going to win the day every day.
Oh, that's great. It was so many nuggets. There's so many pieces of wisdom. Tell me though, going from teacher, what is a little bit more of your journey? What happened? Did you obviously you ended your teaching career. What happened?
Yeah. So I ended my teaching career because of that day that they said, we're going to add something to what you're already doing. And I thought, I just have nothing more to give. I mean, I'm already going in early and staying late and taking work home and working weekends and spending my own money on classroom supplies and snacks. Cause sometimes school, our students come to us hungry and I've got snacks and I've got treats and I've got rewards and stamps and stickers and toys and all the things that, students want. And I just thought, I don't know what else I can do. And so I became a certified, when I found out that people were hiring etiquette consultants, I became a certified etiquette consultant through the Protocol School of Washington and went back to my school and said, hey, I've got this certification. I want to start teaching these skills. I want to start teaching leadership, and I really want to do this. And my goal was to keep my job because I have a master's degree in educational leadership, and I have 15 hours above that was working on a superintendent certificate and a doctorate, so that I could at least, move up in the school systems. I wanted to be an educator. And my principal laughed at me and said, we don't need a certification for etiquette. I mean, I can get a basketball coach to do that during our activity period.
Why hasn't he already?
And they kind of poo-pooed on it. Well, because, and this is what I found with schools, they're turning it around now. But remember, this was 2011 and 12. Back then, they didn't see the value because they thought that as long as they could get good test scores, we were producing good workforce, right? Because schools are graded on test scores.
Yeah. And given funding from that.
Yeah. So we spend 90% of education teaching the what we call technical skills, things that can be measured, math, science, reading, language. We spend most of our time at teaching that. But the research shows that 85% of a person's success comes from people skills.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. That means so much more to me why I struggled with having to go to college and learn everything I just learned in junior high and high school all over again. I'm like, I don't see how this is going to get me closer to what I need to do.
Right. Right. And so many of our students now are like, why am I doing this? I mean, how many times have you come home and heard your students say, why do I need algebra? Like, when am I going to use algebra?
Maybe only the engineers, but yeah,
right,
for sure.
Right. For most of us, we don't need it. And I know at one point, my district actually started teaching algebra in 8th grade so that we could get to calculus, because they really advanced it, because they thought everybody, if we had a more rigorous curriculum, then we'd have more successful people. But the research shows that the successful people are those who are good at what they do, but that can communicate that, who have emotional intelligence. It's not the IQ that matters. It's the EQ that matters.
Yes.
And so really it's all about communication. It's all about understanding who you are. It's about dealing with impostor syndrome in your head and teaching people to have positive outlooks, to deal with drama, to stay away from drama and gossip, and set goals and then go get it. 'Cause you can learn the skill. You can learn any skill.
Yeah. That's incredible.
I could teach a plumber, because I started a plumbing company then too after that. So, there's that. I started a plumbing company, and what I learned is that I had to teach all my plumbers and our CCRs all about this, because I had to teach them how to represent me when they're in somebody's home.
Yeah.
So I learned to hire for culture and train the skill. I can train someone to change out a water heater, but I cannot train someone's heart and character.
Ooh. Man, you're spitting facts out right now, left and right, that people are starting to understand. Even, man, there's so many good things I want to say, but I want to hear all of your story. I don't want to interrupt any of it. But
no. I mean, and I just learned that, we called our CCR the director of first impressions, because she was the first impression of our company. When she answered the phone, it was an impression.
Yeah.
We put our plumbers in uniforms. We didn't want them to be the stinky, smelly, crack, showing plumber, right? We wanted to be different. We wanted to show up as a professional, because plumbers are professionals.
Yes.
And so we wanted them to look good and smell good and be intelligent, and to be able to communicate with our clients, because, a client doesn't have to use you. Just because you show up and you're in the house doesn't mean that they can say, oh, okay, you fix it.
Mm-hmm.
They can say, I don't think I like you. I don't like your pricing. I don't like your attitude. We can get out. So attitude, image, and the way you manage yourself is really, really important. And I call that aim for success. You just have to really have all that in check. And so I think we should teach it in schools. And I know I taught it to my plumbers, and we grew that company. Gosh, in three years, we were at $1 million in revenue from the ground floor. I mean, we started it from scratch, but we did it based on relationships, culture, doing the right thing by customers, and then figuring out the 3 wins.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're not at the plumbing. What happened after that?
Well, then I began to coach. I went to work for a best practice. We sold it. And then I went to work for a best practice organization and coached plumbing companies. And what I realized is that I had already worked for myself. And so I wasn't, thrilled about working for somebody else, but I had a personal, I don't know how to say this. I had a personal journey where I experienced a lot of loss in a 12-month period. I went through a divorce. So I lost my marriage. We had the plumbing company. We had a networking group that we had a business that we'd invested in. We had some other businesses, and I lost all of that. My dog died. He was our baby. I had to put him down, and he was literally my baby. And then I lost my brother and my father within 6 weeks of each other at the tail end of that year. So in 12 months, all of the males in my life that I looked up to and loved and were my mentors, they all went away because my dog was a male.
Yeah.
And so I found myself standing alone and in a deep, deep grief situation. And my company was amazing. These people in my company were just outstanding to work with. And after I was coming out of this, they were like, "Hey, Julie, we want you to get this skill set. We want you to do this. We want you to create this. We want you to do this," because they're ready to link arms with me now and grow.
Yeah.
Right. And I realized that weekend after I had that, it was kind of an evaluation, kind of like setting goals and where are we going from here. I came home that night and I went to bed. And what I realized is that I was getting up, going to work, coming home and going to bed. And on weekends, I was staying in bed unless my children called and said, "Do you want to go somewhere and do something?" I wasn't getting out. I wasn't talking to anybody. I was just sitting here in my, in my place, just in bed.
Yeah.
And so I realized that number one, I'm not being fair to my company because what they hired me to do, what they paid me to do was to help them grow. I wasn't being fair to my customers, my members that I was working with, because they were depending on me to be there for them, to help them grow their business and to use my experience and skills to help them. And I wasn't being fair to myself because I wasn't getting through grief. I was just a shell.
Yeah.
And I had to go to my boss and say, I need to leave.
That's
I gotta
tough.
leave. I got to take care of myself. It was tough. It was hard because they were a support system for me. But what I needed was I just couldn't get up and do it anymore. I just was just existing. And I think we have a lot of people out there right now who are on that. I get up, I go to work, I come home,
Yes.
I do dinner, and then I go to bed, and then I get up the next day and I repeat it. And it feels like you're the Truman Show. Right? You're just getting up and going through the motions and you're not really in control of anything. And you just, maybe not even happy. You're on a hamster wheel. And so
they're not even the star of their own movie.
They're not. And so what I've learned now to do is, as a coach, I not only teach soft skills, but I also work with people who, especially women who are going through transition. They're going through transition of divorce. They're going through transition of life changes, and maybe they're empty nesters, or maybe they're finding that they didn't work for a while, but they need to get back into the workforce, or they're just trying to figure out who they are, because I think life takes over and we lose who we are.
Yeah.
It took me a year before I really felt better. And it's taken me, I've been out now 2 years, and probably within the last 6 or 8 months do I feel like I'm clear with my direction and my purpose. And I know what I'm supposed to do. And so, I'm a Ziegler coach. I got that certification, and I work with people on the process communication model to help them understand themselves and it just understand others. And to really, that's how we develop emotional intelligence, is we start with understanding us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a long story to tell
That
you
is a
how I
great
got.
story. And now that brings us kind of right back to all of the work that you're doing right now. One of the questions I love asking people is, because when you go through this whole thing and you figure out, and now you're doing the thing that you're doing and you're impacting so many people, you still have highs and lows throughout all of this. And the thing I like to ask is, why is doing all of this, like trying so hard and continuing to do what you do, why is this so important to you?
Oh gosh, I love this question so much. So I turned 60 last August. And so I did this. I live in Texas, and in Texas, football is our life. We live and breathe football. And so in August, I was struggling with this milestone. Everything up here. You're not where you're supposed to be. You're not living your purpose, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, you know what? Let me just put this in perspective. And I started comparing life to football. So think about this. In our country, in the United States, we live about 80 to be 80 something years old. And so if you divide 80 into 4, because there are 4 quarters in football.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So each quarter of life is about 20 years. Okay. So the first 20 years of your life, you're growing, you're learning, you're figuring things out. I've got a granddaughter who's 5 and one who's almost 2, and they are literally learning what boundaries they are. You've got small kids. How far can they push? What can they do? Can they try? So think about the first quarter of a football game. You're trying to figure out your opponent. You're trying to figure out which of your players showed up today, because the superstars last week may not be on today.
Mm.
So you've got to figure out, is our running game or our passing game on today? What are we going to do? Who is this opponent? Who on that defense do we need to watch out for? Which of them showed up? So it's learning. First quarter is learning and growing.
Yeah.
Then you get into second quarter. And in the second quarter of a football game, you start to try things. You start to take risks. Things start to fall into place. So you coming out of college, maybe you're getting married, maybe you're starting a career, maybe you're having children, and maybe you start to take some risk. You start to build your wealth. You start to figure out where investments are. You start to risk getting married. I'm going to take a risk to have a baby. But in the second quarter of a football game, you do the same thing. You're like, okay, well, let's try this. Let's see if we can do this trick play. Let's see if we can go for 2 points rather than kick a field goal, because we still have time on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what second quarter is about, because it's all part of your growing process. And then there's halftime. Halftime is where you make adjustments. And in a football game, you've got to figure out, okay, we're going to change our game plan.
Yeah.
We are strictly running this. We are not throwing that ball. We've had 4 interceptions. We are not throwing that ball again. That type of thing. And maybe you need to pull a player, and say, you know what? They have your number. So we're going to put somebody else in, so if we can shake things up. You got to change the energy. And in life, we do the same thing. Sometimes we change partners, right? We got married. It didn't work out. We got to change partners. Sometimes we change careers. Sometimes we move. There's an opportunity in another state. I'm going to take this chance and move, because that's what halftime is about. Because here comes third quarter, and third quarter is where things begin to fall into place. And this is where you start to understand that opponent. In a football game, you're like, okay, I got your number. I got you. We figured this out. Now we can go. We're rocking and rolling. We're getting our feet on the ground. And in third quarter of life is the best quarter, because it is the quarter where you start to see the fruits of your investments, long-term effects of your investments. You start to see that you can move into the house of your dreams. You start to get the promotions. Everything begins to fall into place. Your kids start to go to college. All of these things start to fall into place. In third quarter, you start to go, I got this. And at the end of the third quarter, in every football game I've been to, there's a video that comes up. And it's a motivational video with music that gets people on their feet. There's highlights, there's reels, there's There's past superstars and rock stars, and there's all about team spirit and school spirit. And everyone is on their feet cheering because the fourth quarter is about to begin. And this is where games are won. You win your game in the fourth quarter. So in your fourth quarter, you get to use all of your experiences that you've learned. Everything has come to your point, to this point where now it's your turn to leave your legacy. An inheritance is what you leave to somebody. A legacy is what you leave in somebody. So now you are going to shine because you had to meet the people you needed to meet along your journey. You had to acquire the skills. You had to learn the lessons. You had to have the ups and downs. You had to go through the divorce. You had to go through the career change. You had to go through the disappointments in order to get the wins. And now it is your time to shine. And so that is how I look at the fourth quarter. And this is why I'm so passionate about this, is because this is my legacy.
Yeah.
Is helping others and lift them up and help set them up for success.
I loved how you just beautifully explained that. And I could see how you are shining so much in that. Well, if you said you're 60, you're in your fourth quarter. This is your time to shine and leave that legacy.
It's the beginning of my fourth quarter, maybe the end of my third, because it's 80 something.
Yeah, for women, right? But
I don't know. I mean,
man, that's so fun.
I could go tomorrow. I mean, I don't know, right? We never know when the time is coming, but this is just how I reconciled it in my life, that this is just a number. It doesn't mean that I'm at the end of my life, but I have lived more life than I have left. So what am I going to do? How am I going to maximize this time? I'm going to pour into as many people as I can and help them live their best life.
Oh man, that's incredible. That is a fantastic answer. That actually leads me to my next question is like, what's on the horizon? What's next? You're doing so many great things. Like, what little secrets you want to let us in on what you're up to?
Well, I've got a book coming out. Yep, I've got a book. It will be out by the end of the year.
Yes.
Been working on that. I've had this idea rolling around in my head for a while, and now it's just kind of getting it out. I am putting together, I'm wanting to work more with faith-based entrepreneurs and women, females, to help them really look behind your brand. And we talk a lot about branding and fonts and colors and, what you wear and how, your logo and all of that. But before you can have a brand, you have to know who you are. So it's kind of a behind the brand, because you are the face of your company. You're the face of your life. You're the face of your family. If you have a family, like for me, when everybody went away in 2022, between May of 2022 and April of 2023, everybody went away in my life, and I found myself being alone. And I realized no one's going to come rescue me except for God.
Yeah.
And so, I had to really learn that my brand on the outside, that while I was stoic and no one knew what I was really going through because I can cover it up, what I knew was I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't being authentic to myself. And so what's really behind the brand?
Yeah.
And so that's really what I'm working on in this next chapter, is to help people behind the brand peel back the layers. Let's get back to the core of who you are, because I want to meet you where you are so that I can help you move forward.
Oh my gosh. You are so wonderful. You're such a gem. I'm so happy that you're in my life. And I'm so grateful that you got to come and share your little nuggets of wisdom. Let me do this though. The people that are listening to all this, like, I need to know you. How do I get to know you? Okay, number one, if you guys aren't friending me, connecting with me on LinkedIn, do that first. And you get to look through all the people that I'm connected with. You're going to friend her on LinkedIn because we're professionals today, right? Like, so that's where you're at. But also, what is your favorite way that you want people to come find you?
Well, my website is todaysprofessionals.com, and that's today's with an S, professionals with an S.com. And you have to put in, if you search it, you have to do www.todaysprofessionals.com. And there's a contact form on there, and fill it out, and I will reach right back out to you.
That's perfect.
But of course, I'm on all social media. LinkedIn, it's The Real Julie A. Jones. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram and LinkedIn and TikTok and X. So
Perfect. Well, you know what we'll do is all those links will be below. You guys can come find her, follow her. She is putting out amazing tips and tricks. She's got her own podcast too that you should check out. It's amazing. And
And you're
you know
coming
what?
on.
I'm so grateful for your time and that you were able to come and hang out with me and be on my podcast today. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap up. Is there anything that you want to leave with everybody, like a one-liner or a nugget?
Yeah. I mean, I think that you need to understand that you were created for a purpose and that you have a light that shines in you, and you need to not be afraid to let that light shine, because people who are looking for your light will find it when you let it shine. And those who are not looking for it or can't be around that particular light for whatever reason, they will go away, and that's okay. Just let your light shine, be you, so that the people who need you and are looking for you will find you.
I love it so much. Thank you again. Thank you guys for staying till the end. I will catch you on the next episode, and you guys go have a wonderful day. Bye. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Tiffany.